Committee on Education. He was also previously a pioneer director of the National Commission for Colleges of Education. Dr. Lakoto, we're glad to have you this afternoon, almost afternoon now, for this interaction. And then to my immediate left, of course, his praises have been deservedly sounded in the course of this summit. Professor Ishaq Oloyede. Professor Ishaq Oloyede is the incumbent Registrar and CEO of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. He's serving his second term, and the tremendous reforms that he's brought in the JAMB procedures as well as admissions, those efforts have yielded positive gains. Professor Oloyede, of course, had his first degree in Islamic Studies, capped it, of course, with a doctorate, and then became a professor in 1995, following up, of course, to become the Vice Chancellor of his alma mater, which is the University of Ilorin. He was also, at some point in the course of his career, the chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellors and also president of the Association of African Universities. Professor Ishaq Oloyede, we're glad that you are amongst the panelists this afternoon.
Thank you.
The point has been very well made, and we do know about the primacy of education in the life of first the individual, in the life of a family, in the life of a society, in the life of a nation, and ultimately for humanity. And the primary concern that warrants the subject matter for this year's summit has to do with the less than salutary returns that we are getting from our education sector on account of the corrupt tendencies that are pervasive. We heard the keynote speaker at this event, that's Professor Atahiru Jega, pinpoint some of those issues in the tertiary sector. But we recognize that there are bigger challenges, as he also drew our attention to the basic level and also at the secondary level where the subnational entities are usually in charge. I think that perhaps we have not sufficiently recognized corruption in the education sector as grand corruption. We seem to regard the petty incidents of corruption in the education sector as belonging to aspects of petty corruption. But if you were to have an aggregate of the many incidents, unsalutary and unsavory incidents of corruption in the education sector, then you will recognize that, of course, what we are dealing with is grand corruption. And the consequences are there for all of us to see. The consequences are there because it is whole of society consequence. When, for instance, infrastructure is not provided, when substandard equipment are not provided, substandard equipment are provided, when facilities are not in the first instance even available for students to learn, it means that ultimately we are stealing the future life of those persons who ordinarily would have benefited from the system. Attention has been drawn to UBEC. For many years, it was the case that a number of states were unwilling to pay their counterpart fund. And even when they paid the counterpart fund and then received the matching grant from UBEC, what is it that they did with the funds? I know that underfunding has been a scapegoat, as it were, of the education sector. But one question, and I think the president also drew attention to that, is what value are we getting at the moment for the amounts that we are spending on the education sector? It ought to be a thing that we should never contemplate in our country, that schools have no structures, and where they have structures down in the rainy season, the roofs are leaking, and students have no proper learning environment for them to carry on with their studies. And as we said, deepening poverty, criminality, and the fact that many persons are out there hopeless is an indication that we are not deriving the much benefit that we ought to get from our education subsector. Let no one blame solely banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and insecurity in parts of the country. Why was it that for so many years we were unable to reduce the number of out-of-school children from about 10 million until recently, when UNICEF announced that we now have about 20 million or so out-of-school children? But these are issues that, of course, the panelists will be taking a look at in their respective presentations. Each of them will have 10 minutes max to deal with the subject matter. And if you turn to page 6 of your program, you'll see the outline of your presentations. Now, my pleasure and privilege to invite the first discussant, Ike Oyechere, MFR, to speak on corruption and special initiatives to improve education. And may I add, as much as possible, let's avoid the preliminaries so that we can maximize the time. If there are suggestions or recommendations, please go straight to those suggestions or recommendations. Speak your Oyechere, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm supposed to focus on initiatives on diminishing corruption with emphasis on safe schools. And just like the moderator has said, we have heard a lot of things. The problem is not that we don't know what is happening. It's not about the challenges. So for me, the very first problem, the very first challenge, the very first issue, the question I ask myself is, why is there so much lack of courage? Because I think that is what all this is all about. And that is why I really commend the Professor Roede, who is heading JAB, because what he has exhibited is tremendous courage. And I also commend ICPC, because we have heard all the things they are doing. So even if you hear them talk, and what the ICPC chairman said is the issue. If you do this work the way it should be done, they will come after you. Is it in coming after you that we lack the courage? Let me give you some example. Professor Jega gave us a story of what the vice chancellors or what heads of teachers go through in getting their budget. But they all go through that process. But why is it that they cannot come out with the evidence so that somebody can be used to make a scapegoat? Like the policeman that has just been honored. It's because maybe they like what is going on, or maybe they are party to it. So why is that so? Take the issue of accreditation panel. Today there are strikes and so on about not having infrastructure, not having facilities, not having libraries, not having teaching and learning materials. But we know that most of these courses, most of these programs underwent accreditation processes to know whether this institution has the ability or has the materials, has the staff to run this course. And these accreditation reports say yes, they have, and they are approved, they are accredited. Why is it now they don't have any longer? So there's a problem there. There is something that is not right. Does it mean that those accreditation reports will affect? Does it mean that the panel members aided and abetted? Of course, we know about the need assessment report of 2012. If you have not read it, go and read it. Because for me, that is the most courageous document about our educational system that is in existence. And that will give you the dark gap. What about the issue of the magic centers? We have departments of private schools or quality control, people who are in charge of assessing some of these schools. But we know that more than half of our public schools, more than half of the private schools in this country, either directly or indirectly, serve as magic centers. Who approved them? And every year, some of the exam bodies will announce how many of these schools have been magic centers and so on and so forth. the next year they announce and so on. Where is the closure? Where is the courage to go after them? What of the issue of basic education we are talking about? We all know that the basic education system has failed. There is no way you read a report about education in Nigeria, international or whatever, you don't see that sentence, that line, that number of out-of-school children. One of the things I do is that I try to get some of these out-of-school children into school as part of my social contribution. Some of them, I get them from the village, if they don't have come to Abuja and so on and so on. And I can tell you that one of my experiences this year makes me sad. I went to register a primary one school, a primary one child, a child that is going to primary one, into a school in a city, primary school. And they gave me a list, a long list with names. I have to spend 20,000 naira to register it. And I'm saying it publicly, they can challenge me. That list is there, everything there is accounted for. When I now complain, and the guy was like, well, okay, we didn't charge school fees. Did you see anyone that says school fees? Did you see which one says school fees? But all other things are there, 20,000. And we have 20 million to, how many 20 million, how many fathers, how many of those people who don't have, who have this out of school children or whatever, how many of them have 20 million to go there? And we now say we are running free and compulsory basic education. Why don't we just say the thing is a failure? So these are some of the issues. Okay, talk about IPs. Why one of the reasons why IPs was established was to check corruption and so on and so forth. But we have now found that the corruption is transferred from one group, check corruption in tertiary institutions or under that. But the recent discovery, the recent announcement about corruption, about it, shows that it's just a transfer of this thing. And that brings me to the issue of one of the initiatives of ICPC. ICPC has anti-corruption transparency units in these universities, in these tertiary institutions. And they are supposed to be the eyes and representative of ICPC, as I understand it. But are they now saying that why is all this humongous rot and horrific things happening in the institution? Does it not mean that the IP people are not doing what they have said to do, or they're not telling ICPC and so on? Because I don't expect, for example, an active member, a university that has an active member, wouldn't know that some professors in those institutions affect professors. We all know that a NUC, sometimes in the recent past, announced the discovery of 10 fake professors in our universities. Are we not saying that those who run those universities or the active members in those universities don't know that? So my take is that this is all about lack of courage. And that is the first thing we should address. Somebody like Osole there, so I have shown that you can still do it, and you do it, and nothing happens to you. Then let me talk about the safe school. I don't want to go into, a lot of work has been done on the physical, what I call the physical aspect of safe school. All these terrorism, kidnappers, and so on, who have found our schools as targets of choice. Because it's easy targets. We have focused attention on that, but I just want to throw attention now that the issue, there is a safety and security element of the issue about exam malpractice and all that, academic dishonesty and corruption. This at the bottom line is that through academic dishonesty, exam malpractice and so on, our institutions are building recruits for corrupt people. That is why the entire system is corrupt, because education is the source code. We have all said that. Again, we know also that we produce doctors, engineers, and lawyers, judicial officers, public officers from our educational system. Most of them pass through this process and get equipped to join the corrupt. That's the point. But for me, that is the most dangerous aspect of the whole thing. And I have been on this topic for almost 26 years, since 1996, when I predicted that what is happening today will happen today. Because the chickens have come home to roost in Nigeria. What do I mean? Today, people are dying collapsed buildings. Collapsed buildings are killing people. Who are building those collapsed? Who are the builders? It must be people trained based on exam malpractice. They have certificates. They have protection of certificates granted by institutions. Who are supervising those things? Are they not public officers? The people in the building plan supervisory offices who are doing those things. We have fatal medical errors that do not happen on account of nurses and doctors and pharmacists that are parading fake certificates. People are dying. We have people that are losing their freedom and they have their lives based on cash and carry judicial system. These are people being produced through exam malpractice. Today, the greatest problem of education is that it has been captured by products of exam malpractice. Otherwise, how can we have fake professors? These are people, they have gone to read there, and these are the professors that also are the returning officers for our elections. The returning of our election system, the returning officer teams are members of the academy, academics, they are professors and so on. But what is happening? The rigging never stop, and that is again why I attack the ICPC. But they have shown an example. There are some people that are there being prosecuted. So you cannot give what you have, and that is why I think the number one grand corruption, and that's why I've said is this issue of the collapse of the moral infrastructure of education through exam malpractice, academic dishonesty. And even from the speeches we have had, we all know about it. The whole list is there. There are over 40, and it's coming up. Over 40 brands. There are rackets, there are malpractices, there are scams going on in the system.